Disclosure information. I, the creator of this video, give permission to anyone to use this video for educational purposes. Also, I give you permission to spread the information in this video. And also, you can use this video for non-profit purposes. And I want you to spread the information as well as connect a link to this video to others. Thank you. Gangstalking targeted in America. Just the facts. Who's behind the attack? And now, a lot of targeted individuals want to know who's behind this evil attack, whether it be who's sponsoring it financially, who's coordinating and planning the attack, and who's executing the attack on a street level. A lot of targeted individuals want to know this. Well, here's the factual information. The people who are really behind this program are the federal government and the military. Yes, as well as the state. But I'll explain how the state is involved in this attack later. First, with the military. The military have something called the 1033 program. The 1033 program basically allows the military to give their surplus equipment to the state or federal law enforcement or any federal or state agency. With that, these agencies can use these military grade equipment on the civilians. Now, why do I explain the 1033 program? Well, because the directed energy weapons are made by who else? The military. And when I mean military, I mean the DOD, Department of Defense. And DARPA, which is a military research company, they also develop these directed energy weapons, and also the military's third-party contractors. They develop these weapons, and if the military can hand down the equipment, their regular military equipment, like M16s and old tanks they don't need anymore, to state and federal governments, what makes you think they're not handing down these directed energy weapons to the state and federal and local government? They law enforcement aspect of these governments, and thus the Department of Justice, yes, the Department of Justice allows law enforcement, whether it be state or federal, to use directed energy weapons or any exotic weapons under the guise of crowd control or riot control. But here's the thing about it though. Targeted individuals are individuals. So how can you use a weapon that's under the guise of crowd control or riot control on an individual? Well, it's DARPA wants information on these directed energy weapons, on how they work. So in order to understand how they work, you got to test them in a real-time environment. And who better to test them on than a targeted individual? Also, on a military level, the NSA, the National Security Agency, they fall under the Department of Defense. And with the NSA, why do I bring them up? Because the NSA, they have a lot of patents, a lot of secret patents. And what they do is they put a gag order on these patents. And so they have, as well as the military, they put gag orders on their patents. They could have secret patents that the civilian population won't even know exist, because there's a law that puts a gag order on the patents. So there's some strange and exotic technology that if we witness them, we will think it's magic, but it's not. It's technology, and we will never know that these technology exist. Well, at least for now. Maybe down the road, when things become probably 25 years down the road. But anyway, why do I bring up the NSA? Because the NSA, they track everybody's information, whether it be on internet, phone, as well as any other form of communication. Now, with the military, why do I bring up the military? Because the military, they have a history of doing human experimentation on the U.S. civilian population without their consent. And also, it's not about just testing directed energy weapons or biological weapons. It's also about testing psychological warfare tactics as well. and they could do psychological warfare tactics on a civilian level, a group level, or an individual level. Now, for what reasons they are doing this, I do not know. But obviously, they're trying to develop it and make it more efficient and useful. That's why they have to test it on various peoples of all race, ages, classes, walks of life. And also, the federal government is involved in this too as well. Let me get into deeper details first. And also, with the military, they also have their third-party contractors, such as Raytheon and Lockheed. They make the weapons for the military, and they also test these weapons on the civilian population. And they do this through permission from the military or the federal government or state government. So these third-party groups are also experimenting on the civilian population. Now, the federal government is involved in many ways in gang stalking. One way is through the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice, they allow the Department of Defense to test their directed energy weapons on the civilian population under the guise of crowd control and riot control. And they also hand down these directed energy weapons to federal law enforcement and state law enforcement. And also, the federal government is involved through the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Yes, again, I repeat, the federal government is involved in gang stalking through the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Now, this task force predates back into the 1980s. So, a lot of people who've been claiming they've been targeted individuals since the 1980s or even before 9/11, they're not lying, because this was done through the Joint Terrorism Task Force, where the FBI and state and local police would work in conjunction. And also, terrorist watch list and other government watch lists, they predate 9/11. So a watch list and a Joint Terrorism Task Force, that's nothing new. And also, if you look up the Joint Terrorism Task Force, what they do is they actually supply the police and also community watch groups with walkie-talkies, and they also reimburse them for gas. Keyword, they reimburse the police and also these community watch groups for gas. So basically, when they follow you or vehically harass you with their cars, they get reimbursed gas money. And that would explain why would somebody you never know or seen follow you with their car? Like, why would someone waste their own gas money just to follow you? They're being reimbursed through the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And also, they also supply them with vehicles if necessary and walkie-talkies. You could look this up. Just look up Joint Terrorism Task Force. And also with the FBI, because the FBI, they have a group called InfraGard. And InfraGard is basically like the civilian aspect of FBI. Basically, a bunch of civilians with the same or almost quasi-like powers of the FBI. And with this predates 9/11 too. It goes back to 1996. And I'm sure other federal agencies, they have they little civilian aspects of their companies. Like the FBI has InfraGard, the state or local police, they would have their civilian watch groups. And I'm sure the CIA or the NSA probably got their own version of that, but that's another story. Now, the CIA are involved in this gang stalking program. How? Well, not directly, but historically, the tactics that the CIA used or tried to develop through MK Ultra are involved in the gang stalking program. Also, a lot of people think that the CIA, they don't do intelligence work within the borders of the United States of America. That is not true. After 9/11, the fusion centers combine information from all agencies, whether it be state, federal, or military. And the CIA, they pay a lot of third-party groups to do their intelligence work. So, because last year alone, a lot of private intelligence agencies, they made so much money from the U.S. government because they did the United States government intelligence work. And the CIA, they contract these groups. And in turn, when the FBI or CIA, since they're bound by the law, these third-party groups are not bound by the law. So when the CIA or FBI wants them to do their dirty work, guess who's going to be hired to do their dirty work? These third-party intelligence groups or these risk management groups. And these groups are involved in the gang stalking on the behalf of the CIA and the FBI, as well as the fusion centers. Also, one key component that a lot of targeted individuals don't know on a federal level who's involved on a gang stalking level. I'm going to say it, but first, before I tell them who it really is behind the gang stalking level on a federal level, well, let me explain another group first. And that group is Homeland Security. Yes, Homeland Security is involved in gang stalking. They give out grants. They're in charge of the fusion centers, which take all the information from all these state and federal military levels. So now, after I said this, the most important group that's involved in gang stalking, you're not going to believe it, but it's actually FEMA. Yes, Federal Emergency Management Agency. They're involved in gang stalking. FEMA goes back to 1957. And why do I say FEMA? Because FEMA, they give out grants to these community watch groups such as CERT. You could look that up. And these community watch groups, also like Citizens on Patrols, they go back to 1990 and all the way back even before 9/11. And FEMA, they give grants to these community groups on a community level, and these groups, they apply for the grant money. See, and in order to get the grant money, they have to have a justified reason to get this grant money. One of these categories is for disaster relief. So, like, say if there's a tornado and whatnot, and also for terrorism. And with 9/11, I'm sure after 9/11, I'm sure a lot of community groups are signing up for that grant money under the guise that they're doing it because they claim to have terrorism in their communities and stuff. And that's why a lot of civilians or community level groups, they could actually try to put your name on a list or people who they don't like on this list just to get this grant money from FEMA. And this goes back to 1990. So with that being said, FEMA, and that's how a targeted individual could actually be on the list, because if they added on to this list their community group or program that does Citizens on Patrol or Community Watch, would actually get more grant money. So the more people they add on their list, like, hey, we think this person's terrorism, we think this person is a terrorist, we need more money to watch him or keep an eye on him, they're going to get more grant money. So I'm sure that's why after 9/11, they added more people on the list. And that's how it works. FEMA gives out this grant money like crazy. And the funny thing about it is that FEMA, they do the drills, and as well as the military. The two groups that do the drills that a lot of people claim are mostly are false flags are FEMA, which falls under Homeland Security right now, and it predates Homeland Security, or the military. They do drills too. So when you see these ads on Craigslist and stuff for crisis actors, it's either from FEMA or the military or some state agency. But FEMA and the military, they do the most drills, and they hand out the most grant money to these community groups so they could prevent disaster attacks or terrorism attacks. Now, it's not only just Citizens on Patrol or CERT groups that apply for these FEMA grants or federal government grants. It's also third-party companies and organizations that apply for these grants as well. And also, any organization in your local community can apply for these grants under the guise of terrorism prevention or terrorism readiness. And also, local police, firefighters, and ambulance, they could sign up for these grants too, and that would explain why they participate in the gang stalking. And also with the third party groups, because these third party groups, like these big multi-million dollar corporations like Booz Hamilton and any other risk management groups, they try to get these government contracts. And if they fall under the category of terrorism readiness or terrorism prevention, they would be most likely to get this grant. And that would probably explain why they take so long to harass and target a targeted individual, because if they kill you right away, that's one person off the list, and that'll be less money in their pocket. So my theory on that too, as well, is that they're also using targeted individuals as like a way to get money from the government. Like, you're basically the gang stalkers or the perps paycheck. You're the reason why they're getting more money in their pocket. So take that into consideration, targeted individuals. Now, before I go into deeper details on who's behind the program and the structure, I would like to explain the origins of the attack. And one of the origins of gang stalking is called Zersetzung. And this originates from Germany back in the 1950s. And the purpose of Zersetzung, which is German for decomposition or breakdown, was to destabilize dissidents in Germany, because they realized they can't put all these people in jail. So one way to take them out or take care of them is to destabilize them. And if you look up research on Zersetzung, you would see it's basically the same thing that people who are victims of gang stalking or organized harassment talk about. So Zersetzung and gang stalking are literally the same thing. It's to destabilize dissidents, and it dates back into the 1950s. And speaking of 1950s, another program that was created back in the 1950s was COINTELPRO in United States of America. And this program was created by the FBI to conduct counterintelligence against groups that they considered subversive, such as the Black Panthers and the hippie movement and other counterculture movements back in the 1960s in America by the FBI Director Hoover. So what a coincidence. Back in the 1950s, COINTELPRO was created, and in Germany, Zersetzung was sort of like their equivalent to COINTELPRO. And the reason why I explain like the correlation, or try to show correlation between Zersetzung and COINTELPRO, is because back in the days, America, they brought Nazi scientists into America. And so the information that the Nazi scientists have, the American government, they use the same tactics that the German government used. Zersetzung, COINTELPRO, gang stalking, all the same thing. Also, with the origins of gang stalking, one must look up MK Ultra. This was a program conducted by the CIA in the 1950s and 70s to control unwitting targets' behavior against their will and without their consent. Because one thing targeted individuals realize is that the TIs are trying to change their behavior by giving them a false perception of reality, and thus the targeted individual acts on this false perception on reality, and thus his behavior patterns will change, and as well as his thought patterns. So look up MK Ultra, targeted individuals, and this program was created in the 1950s, just like COINTELPRO and Zersetzung. Also, I want targeted individuals to look up trauma-based mind control when it comes to the origins of gang stalking, and also the military covert experimentations. These are all the origins of gang stalking. Also, with the CIA MK Ultra, they use LSD, which is a drug, and other forms of drugs on targets without their consent. So just imagine that a government agency, a legal, legitimate government agency, is secretly and covertly drugging people, and the people don't even know that they're being drugged. And some of these people end up dying, and some of these people end up actually going to a mental institution, not knowing that the only reason why they psychotically broke down is because they were being covertly drugged by the CIA without their consent or knowledge. So just imagine how many people are being in these mental institutions or died. And these CIA MK Ultra experiments, they still going on to this day, but they conducted on disabled people or people that could be discredited or targeted individuals. So, and that would explain the covert drugging aspect of gang stalking. Take 13, who's behind the program and action. Now, who controls which component of the program, or which component of the program falls into what category? Now, with gang stalking, you have gang stalking on a local level, gang stalking on a city level, gang stalking on a state and regional level, and then you have gang stalking on a federal level, and then you have gang stalking on a military level. And in some cases, when some TIs, they travel out of the country, they claim they're even being gang stalked when they're in other countries and in other states. So that says it all. Now, on a local or city level, that's where the perps on the ground level work. Now, these community watch groups, a community watch group doesn't actually mean an established community watch group. Like, there's certain organizations or groups in the community that can be used to stalk a TI on the ground level. And many of these groups on the ground level consist of like regular everyday civilians, like your neighbors and stuff like that, or some people you never seen in the neighborhood, but they could actually be involved in the gang stalking. Like, they would use some low level people, like people who probably don't work, who probably like are on drugs or welfare or any other, or even they even use disabled people, and they even use children from the local community to gang stalk and harass you. Like, if you try to look outside your window, they would already be there, ready to do a noise campaign or make noise or do some street theater. So this exists on a local level. They use like these perpetrators on a street level. Also, with the gang stalking on a local and city level, they use people to gang stalk the targeted individual from all walks of life. They could be from races, classes, religions, and all that stuff. For example, they would use people from the LGBT community to harass a targeted individual. They would actually use church people, yes, religious people, whether it be Christian, Muslim, Jews, any religion, to harass a targeted individual. And also they use children. They also use certain ethnic groups. And here's the trick with that too. They, in the early stages of your gang stalking, they will try to trick you to make it look like it's this one ethnic group that's harassing you, so that way you could actually place the blame on that ethnic group. And then when you complain about this ethnic group is harassing you, you would actually look racist. And that's the whole point, to make you look like a racist, a rapist, or a pedophile. And that's why they would also use children to harass you. So now when you complain children harassing you, you look like you're a pedophile or a rapist or something like that. And also they also use women, they use disabled people, like I said before. And also don't fall for the trick where they would try to make you anchor the blame on one group. All these people, these are just people on the ground level. At the end of the day, it's the government on the higher level of the gang stalking who's controlling it and sponsoring it. But you could only focus on a street level when you don't have the information about the gang stalking. But once you understand this program on a deep level, you actually do your research and find out this is from the government financially. Because think about it, those same people on the ground level, are those the people who are flying the planes that are air stalking you? Nope. And think about it, how could a local low level person control the police and let them vehicle harass you and stuff like that? You think a low level person has control of the police? I don't think so. So these people are just trying to appear as a mask, and they're trying to make these local low level people look like they're the ones who are responsible solely for the gang stalking attack. But that's not true. It's the government. So don't focus on the perps. Again, do not focus on the perpetrators of the gang stalking attack. It's the people who are financially sponsoring them and organizing them, which is the government. Now, the person who has the most power of the gang stalking program on a local or city level is the police. Yes, the police, they have the highest control of the gang stalking program on a local, city, or state level. Now, the thing with it is, when a lot of targeted individuals go to the police and they wonder why they don't get no help, or when they complain to the police that they're hearing voices and stuff, they get dumped into a mental institution, is because the police, they're involved in the program. That's why they're not going to help you. They're involved in it. And a lot of people, here's the thing about it though. There's a lot of police officers, they're not in the know of the program. But remember, every police officer at the end of the day is an order follower. So if his captain gives him the order to park his car or do a U-turn with his car as soon as you come out your house, he's following an order. So I didn't say every police officer is in the know of gang stalking, but any and every police officer can participate in the gang stalking program as well, because they're receiving orders. And that's why the police is not going to help you. And also, there are some police who know about this program, and they actually protect the local perpetrators who are organizing the gang stalking on a local level, like the community groups and stuff. And that's why they're not going to actually help you. And when these perps actually try to do you harm and you try to call the police on them, the police are not going to actually help you as well too. Also, that's why I advise every targeted individual, do not go to the police for the V2K or any directed energy weapons. Now, if the perpetrators of the attack literally hit you or harm you, you could actually report that. Or if they do any vandalization on your property, you could do that. Or if they're trespassing, if the perpetrators are trespassing, you could call the police for that. But do not call the police for the V2K or any directed energy weapons, because how could you prove that to the police unless you have any like meter evidence? But if you have meter evidence, then I suggest you do a court case. But do not go to the police for the little minute stuff, because then they could say, oh, that's that crazy person that keeps calling saying, oh, he's being directed energy weapon, or somebody's on in front of his property and stuff. Now, another group I like to point out who's involved in the gang stalking on a local, city, as well as state and regional level are the Freemasons. Yes, I'm calling the Freemasons out because they do participate in gang stalking itself, because they have something called silent dagger, and the Freemasons, they count as a community organization, and also they apply for this grant money as well. So, because a lot of targeted individuals, including myself, when we're in our vehicles and we get harassed through the vehicle harassment by the gang stalkers, which some of the perps are Freemasons, they have the Freemason emblems on their cars, and they surround you and they harass you psychologically while you're driving on the road. And also on the street level too, because there's some Freemasons, what they would do is they would make a homeless person or a disabled person wear a Freemason chain, and one of these people would do like the gang stalking gestures that they harass you with. Because this happened to me various times, where the Freemasons, they would actually harass you, and they would try to make you think that it's just them doing it. Yes, the Freemasons are involved in it, and they actually use the low-level Masons to participate in the gang stalking, whether it be through the vehicle harassment, the jesters, and imposters. So I'm calling this group out specifically. I know you're not the only group that does gang stalking, but I have to call you out specifically because the Freemasons they have something called silent dagger, which is a form of trying to coerce another Freemason to do suicide, or anybody who's an enemy of the Freemasons. So a lot of targeted individuals, I want you to notice that the Freemasons are involved in gang stalking, but they're not involved in the gang stalking as in controlling the whole aspect of the gang stalking program. They're perps in the program, but they're not involved. They don't control the whole gang stalking program financially or on a military level. And with the Freemasons, so basically the Freemasons, they're just involved in the gang stalking on a perp level. So basically they'll just be the perps on a vehicle level and a ground level. Like basically they're only involved in gang stalking on a gang stalking level, like just the stalking and the harassment level. That's all, but not on the planning and coordinating. Now another group I have to call out is the Jehovah Witness, because another group that has to be called out is the Jehovah Witness. Yes, the group that hands the Watchtower and those Awake magazines that knock on your door. They're involved in the gang stalking program. Now, am I saying every Jehovah Witness is a part of this gang stalking program? No, but most likely, when they use the perps from the Jehovah Witness on a gang stalking level, they're going to use the low level members or either dedicated members. Now, why do I mention the Jehovah Witness? Is because they have a program where they shun former members of their Jehovah Witness group, and this practice is similar to gang stalking in some ways. But now these Jehovah Witness, they're using this practice. They're using this practice on targeted individuals who are most likely not members of their group. And these Jehovah Witness, they also apply for this grant money as well too. And that's how they're involved in the gang stalking. They either receive this money from the federal government because they're considered a organization in the community. So, and it's not just only this Jehovah Witness church organization. There are many other church organizations on a local level that are involved in gang stalking. So it's not. I'm not just saying it's only the Jehovah Witness that are involved in this program. It's also other various church groups. It could probably be like that small church that you never hear of, or that big mega church. Any various church groups are involved in the gang stalking program. And why do I bring this up? Because when you think of church people, you think of like holy people. They don't look for trouble. So it's like, why would religious people do this for? So it makes you question their faith, but that's not up to me to decide. But from experience, they do use church people to harass you. And I'm not saying every church people is a part of the gang stalking program. And also, it's not just the church people. It's also other religious groups like Christians, even Muslim groups, even Jewish groups. They're involved in the gang stalking program. And other religious groups that I don't even know exist. So it's not just one church group. It's various religious groups as well. Now, it's not just religious groups that are involved in the gang stalking program. It's also subgenre groups as well. So you might actually see like motorcycle gangs and even street gangs are involved in it. Yes, street gangs are involved in it, but do you actually think the street gang want the community to be safe or prevent terrorism? Or they're doing it for cash? And they also use criminals, because criminals, they can actually like have the criminals and get involved in the gang stalking, so in return they could get less jail time or charges dropped against them. So there's a criminal element involved in gang stalking. And then you have the real criminal element, like when the government wants to do something real dirty and they can't have the police officers or these federal aspects of the gang stalking program do the dirty work. They might have these former criminals such as organized crime or street gangs to do some components of the gang stalking, like trying to provoke you, trying to start a fight with you, like literally a physical fight with you. And also there's other groups like LBGT. I already mentioned that already. And also they use children, they use union workers, and they use city workers. You'll see that a lot. They use city workers, union workers, and they also would use people in your local neighborhood that work in businesses and stores too as well. Whether they're aware of what they're doing or they're not aware of the bigger picture. Now, if you see gang stalking, the program, like a chess game, then you could break it down to levels to describe the gang stalking program. Like you would have the chess pieces, then you have the chess player, and then you have the sponsor of the chess player. Like, for example, the chess pieces of gang stalking will be the perps, whether the perps know what they're doing to their level and extent, or you have the low level instructional perps, which are basically the perps who just get paid very little money and they're instructed just to do a certain task. They don't know why they're doing it, but they're getting paid or reimbursed in some shape or form to do it. And so when it comes to chess pieces, the perps will be like the chess pieces. And when it comes to the chess player would either be the government, which includes law enforcement or any government agency, whether it's state, federal, or local, or it will be third-party corporations, like groups that get government contracts to do the gang stalking. Yes, there are third-party groups and companies that get contracted by the government to do this work, this intelligence work or investigation works. And these groups, they're in the know. Like, they know why they're doing it, they know who they're doing it for. And these people, they'll never actually show their face to you. Like, you'll never see them face to face. And if you do, it would be a low-level person from these government agencies or third-party corporations that do this work. They would act as the chess players of gang stalking. Now, who's sponsoring the gang stalking program? That, like, is just basically like NASCAR. Like, when you see NASCAR, you see all those logos. You see all those logos on the stickers and stickers on the car. Basically, that's the people who pay and give money to sponsor that NASCAR so that that car could drive. And the sponsor of gang stalker will be the government, mostly from the federal and military level. And then this money trickles down to the state, because the state also applies for these federal grants too as well. So the sponsors of the gang stalking program will be the military, the DOD, and the federal government are the Department of Justice and FEMA and Homeland Security and other federal agencies. So now that you break gang stalking down to a level where you see it as a chess game, the chess pieces will be the perps, the chess players will be the government and the corporations and the planners and the coordinations and those who coordinate the activities, and the sponsor will be the government, whether it be federal or military. Now, how are the police, firefighter, military, and feds are used in this gang stalking program? Well, first with the police are being used by conducting investigations. Yes, the police can conduct investigations on an individual without their consent or knowing. I mean, it makes sense. Why would you conduct an investigation on somebody with them knowing? And the police, specifically the NYPD, from my experience, when I filed my lawsuit against the gang stalking, and when I sued the NYPD, they said the lawyer who's representing the NYPD said it's not illegal for the police to investigate you. But here's the thing about it: they use their community groups to do the dirty work for them that they can't legally do. And I also have a police officer in recording saying this. I also have evidence of a police officer and his civilian group gang stalking and harassing me, and I filed the complaint for it, and I still never received any answer from that. I will show you that video later. And also, the police, they use their police cars for street theater, as well as their helicopters for street theater, and also to stalk and track you. Now, with the firefighters, yes, the firefighters. Now, I have respect for the firefighters that they save lives and stuff, but I'm sure the firefighters, they know about this program, and they engage in the street theater too as well. They engage a lot in the street theater. And now how the military is involved, they're involved with their planes, their technology, and their resources. I explained that already, how in deeper details how they are involved. And also with gang stalking, the fraternal order of the police are also involved in the gang stalking. These are former police officers or current police officers. They also engage in the gang stalking as well. And also I'm sure they have a fraternal order of firefighters and whatnot. All these secret groups or fraternity groups that involve law enforcement or any city workers, they have these fraternal groups as well. They involved in the gang stalking as well. Because from my experience, when I was being gang stalked, the Metropolitan Transit Authority police, one of their vehicles kept on following me. So it's not just the law enforcement, as in police vehicles that follow you. Also, sanitation enforcement, police cars follow you and are involved in the street theater. And also, the Metropolitan Transit Authority police, they're involved in the street theater as well. So it's not just police law enforcement. Other city enforcement and security agencies will be involved in the gang stalking. Now, for targeted individuals, I need to let them know right now, very clearly, that the history of the gang stalking program is that the gang stalking is an established program that predates 9/11. It just got more money after 9/11, and more people were put on the list. And this program also got more resources and technology added to it. And also, with the gang stalking program, other federal agencies or state agencies have been involved in the program, and many aspects of the gang stalking program have been compartmentalized, meaning certain agencies would only do one part of the gang stalking, and another agency, whether state or federal, would do another aspect of the gang stalking. Because, like I mentioned earlier, there are various components. There are various components to the gang stalking attack, like the gang stalking, the covert drugging, the electronic harassment, the psychological warfare, and remote neuromonitoring. Now, not every targeted individual gets all these components. Some targeted individuals only get some, and then there are some targeted individuals who get everything. And the targeted individuals that get everything, all components of the attack, they're actually in a smaller number. So the gang stalking has been compartmentalized, and that's why it's hard to track down which agency, because certain agencies do different components of the gang stalking attack. So if you're going to sue, you're gonna have to sue the United States of America, and then find out which local agencies are involved, so you can put them on a lawsuit as well. Now, when getting proof and evidence for gang stalking, to prove who's really behind it, and to get evidence of these federal, state, and city agencies, you need to record evidence of the police cars, the ambulance, as well as the planes that are following you. This evidence is very important, because this will prove that your government, whichever level it's on, is involved in the gang stalking and harassment. Record the police cars, the firefighters, and the ambulance when they do their street theater and psychological harassment. Also, record the street theater, but record the street theater just to show the patterns. So now, when you have another video recording, you connect the two video recordings together to show the people that, look, see, when I go to this location, the same street theater and the same gestures. And also, you record the planes that are following you. Yes, you record the planes in the sky. And this is really important, because if you could show this to your government and they can't say, we don't know who this plane belongs to, because that doesn't make any sense. Because how does, after post 9/11, keyword, after post 9/11, if your government says we don't know who this plane belongs to, that means they're not really doing a good job protecting the airspace. And I live in New York City, so if I show this to my government and say, these are your planes harassing, tracking, and stalking me, and they say they don't know who it is, well, post 9/11 New York City, so you're trying to tell me you don't know which planes are these in the sky, who they belong to? So what about these planes wanted to do a crash into the World Trade Center? So that would mean you're not doing your job of protecting the airspace. So they do know who it is, but they'll play dumb. But that's how you counterattack their ignorance, when they don't know when they try to play like they don't know who these planes belong to. Now, when it comes to the gang stalking program, this program can be used to set up a targeted individual to either entrap them or have a false flag wrapped around them, or use the targeted individual in a false flag. Yes. So that's why, if the targeted individuals, this could be one of the sole purposes why your government is harassing you and constantly agitating you, to set you up and use you in a false flag. And they could do this by discrediting you. Yes. One of the ways they could discredit you is with a psychiatric reprisal, which means they will agitate you to the point where you might get arrested or you might get sent to a mental institution, and then you get diagnosed with a false psychological illness. And once you get diagnosed with a false psychological illness, your credibility is going out the window. And after that, after they have your psychological credibility go out the window, they might actually increase the attack even more, because now nobody's going to believe you. And then with that being said, they could actually put more resources and increase the magnitude of the attack. And that's why they always have perps around you, so the perps can act as false witnesses for the government. So the false witnesses, they will lie and say you started it or you was looking for trouble, when in reality these are really perps. But the real public would not know this. So they could also wrap a false flag around you, and no one will believe you, because they could discredit you with a fake criminal record, or by getting you to act out and start fights with you, and then the police come to arrest you and not the perps. And so now you got this criminal record from the perps provoking you, or you got to face a fake psychological diagnosis, and no one's gonna believe you anymore, and they could paint you out to look like the crazy. Also, by using the targeted individual as an asset for a false flag, it is a way for the government to fulfill their agenda and at the same time dispose of you in a way where it makes it look like you were responsible for your own downfall, when it was really covertly manufactured and set up by the government. Now, the gang stalking program has nothing to do with preventing terrorism or crime. It's more of a way of creating terrorism and crime in a covert way, and to make it look like the government will be the heroes and come to save the public. It's basically like a problem, reaction, solution. And one way I could explain this to targeted individuals is look at the Orlando shooting. Now, the Orlando shooting, why do I use this example? Well, here's why. With the Orlando shooting, you had Omar Martin, who was the guy who allegedly shot the 50 people in the club, who happened to all be in the LBGT community. He happened to shoot all of these people. He killed 50 people, allegedly, and he wounded 53 others. Now, here's the thing about that. Omar Martin, he was questioned by the FBI 2 times on 2 separate occasions. But if he was questioned by the FBI on 2 separate occasions, how come he wasn't put in this quote unquote gang stalking program? Because if he was put in this program, they would have surveilled him just like the innocent targeted individuals, or any targeted individual, 24/7. They would have followed Omar Martin everywhere he went and gone. But yet they didn't. They felt like he didn't need it to be surveilled by the FBI. But here's the thing about it, though. You got innocent targeted individuals doing their everyday thing, minding their own business, doing their own thing, and then all of a sudden, 24/7, even in their house, they're being gang stalked, watched, surveilled, and harassed. But this Omar Martin character wasn't put in this quote-unquote program. So that goes to show you that this program has nothing to do with preventing crime or terrorism. It's more of creating it. Now, the same can be said for the San Bernardino shooter and the Boston bombings that happened recently. The FBI contacted these individuals numerous times, but how come these individuals weren't put on the quote-unquote gang stalking program? Also, for all we know, maybe Omar Martin and the San Bernardino shooters and the alleged perpetrators of the Boston bombing, for all we know, they could have been set up, they could have been targeted individuals, and they could have been set up to make it look like they did these horrific events, for all we know. I mean, just think about that for a minute. And they were just properly disposed of, and at the same time were used as assets by the government to fulfill their agenda for the police state. But at the same time, that's a whole nother story. Also, with the false flag aspect and the setup and entrapment of gang stalking, a targeted individual has to take this into consideration. You've been watched, stalked, harassed for so long. How come no police came and knocked on your door and questioned you or came with a warrant to search your house or property? I mean, if you're quote unquote alleged criminal or terrorist, they would have been long time ago came to your house with a warrant to search your property to see if you're quote unquote have the means to conduct a terrorist attack or some sort of crime. Or they would have arrested you and took you to the police precinct for interrogation. So that's why I keep telling a lot of targeted individuals, do not believe them when they say you did something bad. Because if you did something bad, why do they have to use directed conversation to give you that message? Why can't they just come with the justice system, arrest you and interrogate you, or come with a warrant? And the reason why, because they literally have nothing on you. They're trying to entrap you. They're trying to make you a criminal. You have done nothing wrong. So many times I gotta tell targeted individuals, you did not do anything wrong. Because if you did, that's what the justice system is for. So don't believe them when they tell you, oh, you did something bad. Okay, so arrest me. And because that's what happened with Myron Mays. He walked into the police precinct one time and asked them, okay, if I did anything, arrest me. And they just looked at him like he was crazy. And so for targeted individuals, you did not do anything. So don't do this, because they could actually take you into a mental institution. If you walk into the police station saying, okay, whatever I did, arrest me. I mean, y'all beaming voices in my head. They will take you and dump you in a mental institution for more than 72 hours. So please don't do that, and you did not do anything wrong. I repeat again. Also, the law enforcement or investigative agencies, whether state or federal or local, they can use the guise of an investigation to discredit the targeted individual, and also they can use the harassment from the perps to make their false investigation look justified. So basically, they can have a perp claim you did this and that to them, which is not true, or they could try to use entrapment to set you up or make you look like the bad guy, and thus the investigation could look justified. And also, proactive policing does the same thing. Proactive policing is about getting a criminal to conduct a act or forcing him under a controlled setting or environment to commit a criminal act. And that's basically, proactive policing is basically like a sting operation at the same time. So the gang stalking, when they try to entrap you, it could also be a sting operation they're trying to conduct on you. And that's one thing a targeted individual has to take into consideration. Also, any state or federal investigative or law enforcement agency can get medical records under the guise of national security. So basically, your government, whether state or federal, can access your medical records without your consent or without you knowing. They could do this legally under the guise of national security, or if they suspect you of being a criminal or a quote-unquote terrorist. Now, with this, here's the tricky part though. I'm sure the government has been secretly accessing or getting people medical records without their consent or knowing. And with this, what they can do and how this would help the government with their false flag component is they can use this and survey the medical records of those who are psychologically ill or psychologically vulnerable to see who would be a perfect candidate to set up, discredit, and slander and set up under the guise of national security. Thus, in turn, they could set this person up and use them for their false flag. But how they found this candidate is because through national security, they could access your medical records. And if they suspect you of being a terrorist or for national security reasons, they could just get your medical records without you even knowing. So just imagine a lot of targeted individuals. Who knows? Well, we know there's some government agency that already have our medical records on file, whether we like it or not. And that's why I believe they could use this to the government agencies. They could take these medical records of the psychologically vulnerable and use it to set them up, and how they're gonna set up their gang stalking program in order to psychologically lead their behavior into doing criminal acts. For example, James Holmes, the guy who did that Batman movie theater shooting, even before the incident occurred, allegedly, they said he was being monitored by a psychiatrist or psychologist. So how you know this psychiatrist or psychologist wasn't given his medical records to some federal or government agency? And another thing with that is when the gang stalkers set you up and then you get falsely diagnosed with a fake psychological disorder, they can relay this information to the government, which the government already has. Or as a child, the government has your psychological or medical records, and then maybe as a teenager, they could start grooming you for this gang stalking program. That's why some targeted individuals say that when they look back on the information, that they were being gang stalked ever since they were a kid or young, but they just realized it because they realized there were some aspects. But at the time when they were young, they didn't realize that this was gang stalking. So nowadays, anyone who has like a medical or psychological record, your government could actually have access to your medical record without your consent through national security. Back in the days, the police could do this only if you committed a crime or they arrested you and accused you of a crime. They could access your medical records without consent or have to worrying about have to sign up anything. Now, with that being said, how do we know that the state and federal investigative and law enforcement agencies, as well as the military, how do we know they're not using national security letters and going to city hospitals and demanding that these city hospitals give up medical records of certain individuals? And they could do this by using national security letters. And with that, they could see who would be a perfect candidate for their false flags or their agendas. Because when you look at it, the FBI, most of the terrorist plots that they unfoiled or stopped in advance, they claim most of these suspects, they had psychological illnesses or psychological conditions. So how you know the FBI didn't look at their psychological files in advance and said, hey, these will be the perfect candidates to set up, and then we could look like the superhero on TV. We could look like the hero on TV when we say we caught these guys trying to conduct terrorist attacks, but really the FBI studied these people in advance and had their medical and psychological records in advance and say, let's set up these guys. And in the media, the people who are watching it, we just think, oh man, they just caught some terrorists, they're doing their job. But really, it's more of a problem, reaction, and solution. And then the same thing could be done to targeted individuals too as well. They could be doing the same thing to us. They probably have our medical records and everything in advance, and they're trying to find a way to agitate and harass us to the point where we will get angry and do something, and in turn, we would look like villains on TV, but the masses wouldn't know that, hey, we're being harassed and agitated every day and all of this. But to the masses, we just look like regular crazy people, but really the FBI or these government agencies or military set us up to make us look crazy, Also, a lot of targeted individuals have to take into consideration that, well, before I explain this, not every targeted individual goes through this. Now, the gang stalkers, they have dream manipulation technology. This is based on stimulating certain parts of the brain while the targeted individual is sleeping with combination of silent sound or V2K. So basically, this aspect is probably done by the military or higher federal government agencies. Now, this is technology. Now, a lot of targeted individuals may think this is all magic, but it's actually technology. And certain parts of your brain can be stimulated by electromagnetic radiation. And I think I explained this earlier before, but also another thing targeted individuals have to take into consideration is that the gang stalkers will attack every facet of your life, and you'll be aware of it later. So basically, they slowly attack you, and they slowly attack every aspect of your life: financial, physical, mental, health, relationships. And you'll notice this later, like they do each snippet like in turns and stuff. Also, there are key evil tactics that targeted individuals need to take note of about the gang stalking program. The stalking predates before you even notice it. So basically, these gang stalkers, they were following you and doing surveillance on you even before you even notice the slightest form of the gang stalking attack. You probably saw snippets of the attack but didn't take notice of it until you started to notice the patterns. So at first, when they first attack you for gang stalking, street theater, or any harassment, you probably thought it was an isolated incident at first. But then as you started noticing the patterns and stuff, that's when you realize you're being attacked. And as soon as you notice like certain aspects of your life are being attacked, that's when you realize it's something deeper. Also, they study you before they attack you, and that would explain why some of these gang stalkers, they'll mention stuff in your personal life that you never mentioned to anybody else. And also, they would have perps to start. They would also have perps to try to start conversations with you, and in turn, they will get information about you and relay this back to the gang stalkers headquarters or whoever's coordinating the attack and taking charge of the attack. Also, another thing for targeted individuals to consider is that this is a crime, and the gang stalkers know that it's a crime. That's why they do it covertly. And in turn, once they discredit you even more, they'll probably do it overtly. And as soon as they reach the point where they got other people believing that you're just crazy, and they discredit you to the point where even other people who are not involved in the gang stalking program believe you're crazy, then their attack would actually look justified, but it's not. And another thing to consider is that the electronic harassment is the most evil component of this gang stalking program. It is very evil because of the electronic harassment. They use the V2K and the microwave directed energy weapons to keep you up at night. Sleep deprivation. Yes, they use this tactic called sleep deprivation, and they either use noise campaigns too outside. So 3 a.m, somebody's banging a garbage can as soon as you're about to go into a deep sleep mode. So this is the most evil aspect of the gang stalking program, the electronic harassment. Because when you don't get any sleep, it makes your mind more suggestible and makes you more irritable. You need sleep. That's one thing you can't avoid. And they deprive you of sleep like for months and even years. So some targeted individuals can't remember the last time when they actually got a good night's sleep. Also, another evil aspect of the gang stalking program is the covert drugging. Now, this could put fear into a targeted individual's heart. But one thing a targeted individual has to realize is that you have to eat food or you're gonna die. And this could put fear in a targeted individual. But I repeat, do not be in fear. Buy your food at a supermarket. When you buy your food at a supermarket, they cannot poison all the food at a supermarket. And if they do poison the food at a supermarket, hence what they do, they actually study what you buy at the supermarket. And in turn, they might actually buy that product and poison it at their house or their headquarters, the gang stalkers. And then they bring it back into the supermarket and put it on the shelf, and thus you take it. And you got to think now the supermarket's in on your gang stalking program. Now, there have been many incidents where gang stalkers actually prepare food at a restaurant, and the food has actually been drugged and poisoned. So they could actually bribe one of the chefs or the cooks at the restaurant or whoever serves your food to put the poison in on it. But I doubt that it's actually the whole restaurant that's involved in it. And if they do get the restaurant involved in it, then they could probably lie and say they have the legal right to put your medication in your food because you're crazy, even though that's not true. Because there are court orders where the judge could order someone to take medication, but it would always be with you knowing that no one cannot drug you or give you a drug without your consent or without you knowing it. So that would be illegal for them to do. So my theory is that they bribe certain people either at the supermarket or at the store where you shop, but it's not the whole supermarket and store. And also eat healthy again. Also, another thing targeted individuals have to take into consideration is that this gang stalking program is government sponsored. It's sponsored by the government financially, and then it is also sanctioned by the government. And also there are government resources involved in this gang stalking program. But they'll trick you with their psychological tactics to make you think it's your neighbor or some third party low level person. But at the end of the day, it's all coming from the government. And also another thing to consider is that this gang stalking program is an established program that predates 9/11. Now, also, let me also take into note for the targeted individuals that you did not do any criminal acts. So don't believe the lies that they tell you. Law enforcement, if you did something, they would arrest you, get a warrant to search your house, or they would use the judicial process. So again, you did not do any criminal acts. And also, it is real. Also, another thing that I want targeted individuals to realize that gang stalking is a real program. This is really going on. Now, what it is, it's basically a script. Because the same thing that a targeted individual in Arizona complains about, the same thing a targeted individual in New York, California, and Florida complains about. So this gang stalking program is a script. Even people who are targeted individuals in other countries, they complain about the same thing. Like when they describe the early stages of gang stalking, to the middle levels of gang stalking, and to the late stages of gang stalking. So this is basically a script. So the government developed this program, and the script is being put everywhere. So this gang stalking program, basically, it's a script, and I'm sure there's like probably variation A, B, and C, but it's basically the same thing. So what's the odds of people in various states who never met each other and saw each other go through the same thing? And this would make you realize that you're not going crazy. What's the odds of someone all the way in San Francisco having the same chaos in their life as a person in New York? Exactly, word for word. Also, with targeted individuals, when it comes to this gang stalking program as a script, you got to take into consideration that if they force you to go see a psychologist, the psychologists, a lot of them know about this program, because who do you think developed this program? Psychologists. When you look up the MK Ultra, the history of MK Ultra, it was psychologists that developed this program and then gave it to the CIA and the tactics and stuff. So a lot of psychologists, some of them, they actually work in this gang stalking program on a state level, on a state medical level, and they know this program exists, and then there are others who do not know. So the ones who do know, they will be most likely to diagnose you with a false psychological illness. And the ones who don't know, they could still give you a false psychological illness because they don't even understand the attack. And a lot of psychologists, they don't take into consideration that there are directed energy weapons. You could even explain to them LRAD, V2K, and tell them to look it up. But at the same time, you got to take into consideration that these psychologists, they have to be politically incorrect. Because how would the psychologists look if they go back to their colleagues and say, hey, what this targeted individual is saying is true. There are LRADs, there are V2K. Remember, at the end of the day, if they work in a city hospital, they work for the state and they work for the government. And also, they also worried about their credibility. So, and the same thing goes for judge too as well. They're worried about their credibility. How would that judge look like if I actually took in a case where the targeted individual, his case might sound probable. That judge might look crazy in front of other judges and peers. And that's why a lot of them, they actually know that it exists, but they're too afraid to admit it because they're worried about their own credibility, the judges and psychologists, as well as the doctors. And then there are some judges, psychologists, and doctors who are in on it as well. They know about this program and they know it exists. Also, here are things that targeted individuals should not do. First, you should not focus on what got you into this program. Again, you did not do any criminal acts in any shape or form. The gang stalkers and the people perpetrating this quote-unquote program are the criminals. They are doing criminal and unlawful acts. Also, if you did do something illegal, there's something called the judicial process. So this would actually be like a form of extrajudicial punishment for a crime you haven't done. So I repeat, targeted individuals, I repeated this to you so many times. You did not do any crime in any shape or form. So get that out your head. If you did, that's what the court system and judicial process is for. Also, do not panic, act out, and be violent, because this is what the perpetrators try to do. They try to harass and agitate you constantly, and also electronically harass you if you are one of the targeted individuals who get electronic harassment. These perps are trying to make you snap. These losers, these cowards. And I'm not just talking about the perps. I'm talking about the people who coordinate and plan and structure the gang stalking program, and who are the case manager of your gang stalking program. They're also cowards and losers. They're trying to make you snap and panic. I repeat, do not snap, panic, or be violent. I know it's very hard because they do this to you every day. They constantly harass you every day. So please, I know it's hard to do, but you have to do it. I mean, obviously they're doing it to you for a reason. You must be a very important person for them to all team up on you to do this. So please, do not panic, act out, or be violent, unless it's in a form of self-defense. Like if they literally hit you and they're real close to you, you have a legal right to defend yourself, and not just a legal right, but a God-given right to defend yourself. If they initiate you with physical violence, you have every right to defend yourself back physically, if they attack you physically. But if you can walk away, then walk away. But if they literally attack you, like physically hit you, strike you, try to grab you, try to pick up an object and hit you, you have every right to defend yourself. I repeat. Also, with the self-defense, if they hit you or use violence, physical violence at you, your first option should be to take out your video camera and start recording. So that way now you have evidence of them hitting you, and also record their face clearly. And if they try to hit you, remember your camera's on now, so you're recording them hitting you. So also protect yourself by carrying a video camera with you. In the early stages, this might be useful. And also, one thing I need to say clearly to targeted individuals, I'm going to repeat this again. I need to say this to you clearly. Please do not do suicide, or do not think about doing suicide. Because I know one of the outcomes of the gang stalking program is to get the targeted individual to do suicide, or to make him feel so hopeless, him or her, so hopeless, so depressed, or that they have no control of their life, and the gang stalkers will constantly sabotage your life to the point where you would feel like, oh, there's no more hope, and the only option is to do suicide. So I repeat to all targeted individuals, please do not do suicide. Do not do any violent, self-harming acts on yourself or others. This is what the this is what the gang stalkers want you to do. So I repeat, do not think about or even do suicide or self-harm or harm to others. Now, I would just for this reason, I don't really like people contacting me, but just for this reason, I will leave my email address at the end of this video. So if anyone needs to really contact me about this issue, that's the only purpose I will give you my phone number for. And also, for targeted individuals, please do not move. Do not move to avoid the gang stalking. And the reason why I say this is because the gang stalkers want you to move. Remember, it costs money to move. It costs money to relocate. And guess what's going to happen when you move to this new location? The gang stalkers are going to be there to harass you there too. And when they harass you to the point in your new location, guess what you're going to do again? You're going to move. And then that's going to cost money and stuff. So this is a way to financially attack you by having you move to the point where you're either homeless or you have to move back with a family member. So please do not move. They want you to move so that you could drain your money financially and stuff. And also, do not do irrational things such as do not play into their games or do not counter harass them. That way they could make you look crazy when you try to play into their games or counter harass them. Like say if they do any gestures or funny faces to agitate and harass you, do not do any funny faces or agitations back, because you don't know if you could actually be doing this to the real gang stalker or an instructional perp, and this will make you look crazy. Also, with those targeted individuals who get electronically harassed, do not respond to the electronic harassment, because most of the time the electronic harassment are pre-recorded voices or phrases, and these pre-recorded voices or phrases, they get activated as soon as you do a certain movement or some sort of if your heart rate goes down, automatically you would hear like a voice with a curse word to put you down. And in defense, you might actually respond to it because you think it's a live person on the other side of the microphone. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. It's automated, pre-recorded voices. So do not respond to the V2K or the electronic harassment. And also, to counterattack that, what you would do is respond back positively to yourself. So you say something positive back to yourself. Don't respond to the V2K or electronic harassment when you're trying to go to sleep. Because when you try to go to sleep, they will hit you a lot with the V2K and noise campaign. And do not respond to it. I repeat, again, do not respond to it. Also, when it comes to recording and taking video evidence, targeted individuals, please do not record underage children or provokers. Yes, I understand they use children as well as teenagers to provoke, harass, and agitate you. But please do not record them, because remember, the gang stalkers are slandering you and they're making lies about you that you're a rapist or a pedophile. So now if they see you recording these underage children or teenagers provoking and agitating you, they can flip that around and say, see, he's a pedophile, or he or she is a pedophile or rapist. And this will help the perps get real people to be on their side. So do not record underage children or provokers or agitators. Yes, I understand they use the children and stuff like that, but please do not record it, because you're only going to help them. You're only going to help the gang stalkers get real people to be on their side, and in turn, they can have these real people file complaints about you. Also, when it comes to video recording, the gang stalkers could actually be recording you. Yes, you, the targeted individual. So when the gang stalkers try to provoke, harass, or agitate you, one perpetrator could actually try to harass and agitate you to get a reaction out of you, while there's another gang stalker or perpetrator in the distance recording your reaction, and thus they could use this evidence of you reacting in an adverse way to their harassment and flip it around and say, see, he's crazy, he's unstable. But one thing they could do with their video evidence is edit out the part where they actually provoke and harass you, and thus people will only see parts of the video where you react and act angry, and they could use this to get this grant money, or to have real genuine people be on the side of the gang stalkers. Or when they lie about you, like if they say you're mentally disturbed, or when they say you have violent tendencies, they could lie and say you have violent tendencies, and then they could show this video evidence of showing you reacting to the harassment. But again, they edit out the part of them harassing and agitating you, so they only show the people the side where you react angry and violently. So that's why at the same time, the perpetrators of gang stalkers could actually be recording you at the same time. So take that into consideration, targeted individuals. And now, the legal side to gang stalking is very complex. Yes, there are laws and other stuff in the legal realm to explain gang stalking and how you could fight it and counterattack it. Now, the reason why this gang stalking program is so evil is because on an American level, it violates an American's constitutional rights. Now, one of the rights gang stalking violates is the 14th Amendment. It violates the 8th Amendment, and it also violates the 4th Amendment. Now, I'm not going to get into details about these amendments, but you could look them up. Again, the 14th Amendment, the 8th Amendment, and the 4th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Also, gang stalking, it violates human rights. Yes, human rights. So you could actually go to the United Nations and explain this case. But here's the funny thing about it. This also happens in other Western countries. There are targeted individuals in Australia and London as well, and other countries. So this is actually an international thing. And also, gang stalking, it also violates the Nuremberg codes, which forbids medical experimentation without the person consent. So there's a lot of laws gang stalking violates. Also, in the legal aspect of gang stalking, it uses state, city, federal, and military resources to neutralize a target. So basically, your government and its resources are being used to neutralize and take out American citizens or citizens of its own country. And some of these resources are psychiatric reprisal. I explained that earlier. And also military targeting can help police. Yes, I'm going to repeat that again. Military targeting can be used to help the police. And a lot of targeted individuals do not notice that. The military can actually assist the police. This is a 1984 document that proves that. If you look it up, it's called military targeting. And the military could actually help the police. And it also mentions in this document that they're not liable for any physical or psychological damages. That's what it states on this military document. It's made in 1984. So I want you targeted individuals to look that up. Military targeting 1984. Look up that document. It should be on Google, and I will leave the link if possible. And also other government and city resources that are being used are city utility workers and equipment. So basically, when they do street theater, they use like these utility workers, such as a Metropolitan Transit Authority or Department of Transportation. Yes, they use the equipment and the trucks to do street theater. And also with the military, they use the advanced technology and resources of the military to target everyday Americans. And also they use false investigations, or they use the guise of investigations to harass, torture targeted individuals. So this is your government and your government resources. And that's the thing about it though. So your government is trying to take you out. Now, there have been many targeted individuals who have filed legal cases against the United States government or individuals who they believe are responsible for their gang stalking. Can you sue the United States, the government, on any level, whether it be city, state, federal, or military, or all, against gang stalking? Yes, you can, but you have to get the proper legal terms. One of the many proper legal terms are harassment, defamation, and entrapment. You can't say, oh, the gang stalkers are attacking me. Those are slang. Those are not legal terms. So if you're going to sue them, you can only sue them for harassment, defamation, and entrapment. Also, you do not need to file a federal tort claim because this gang stalking attack is intentional. Again, I'm going to repeat. You do not need to file a federal tort claim because all the acts of gang stalking is intentional. Now, if you want to know what a federal tort claim is, you look that up on Google. Also, do not use slang terms like gang stalking. Use proper terms like proactive policing or a false investigation to state your claim. Also, gang stalking violates the 14th, 8th, and 4th Amendment. So you can mention that because in the legal documents they want to know what constitutional rights were being violated. So you can say 14th, 8th, and the 4th. And there are other constitutional rights that are targeted individuals that they've been violated by the gang stalkers. Also, only put what you can prove on this legal document. Do not try to put, oh, they V2K'd me, they electronically harassed me, because how are you going to prove that? And if you are going to put that they used directed energy weapons on you, then you're going to have this evidence, like you're going to have this meter evidence, or show some proof that, okay, when you use your meter to measure this directed energy signature, that, okay, it's being activated or it's being used on you. And now there have been some targeted individuals where they filed cases and they hired some private investigator or some electronic engineer with these special meters to prove that these directed energy waves are being bombarding their house and themselves. But if you're going to do this, I have to let you know that this is going to cost money. It's going to cost money, and most of the time, the judge will most likely dismiss your case as frivolous. Yes. So if you're going to use all this money to sue the gang stalkers and the United States of America, most likely the judge will dismiss it as frivolous. And it's not because it sounds outlandish, because most of them know it exists and they're actually helping the gang stalking program. So when they help the gang stalking program, they just dismiss the case as frivolous and pretend they don't understand how you rearranged and organized your legal claim. But that's not true. Now, there have been many targeted individuals who have actually filed cases suing because of gang stalking, and some of them actually won. If you look up your research on Google, you will see that a lady in California, she actually won a case against her neighbor who was gang stalking her, and she actually proved that her neighbor was using directed energy weapons against her, and she won the case. And you could actually look this up on Google. So I do not want targeted individuals to lose hope in the legal realm. And also, there's a man in some other state, I forget, he's actually suing the United States government because he actually proved that they put implants in his body without his consent. And he actually has the x-ray pictures showing where the implants are in his body. So that case is actually logged into federal courts and stuff. And also, I would like targeted individuals to know that when you're suing the government, before I explain that, now these targeted individuals, they won the case against gang stalking because they actually sued individuals, but no one actually won a case where they actually sued the government against gang stalking. So that case is yet to come, but soon it will come. And with the targeted individuals, please do not lose hope in the legal aspect of gang stalking. But here's the thing about it though. um if you're going to sue the government, you have to use money from your own pocket, because there's some targeted individuals. They try to actually file the case where the court takes it in for free, and most likely, if you do this, the court is going to dismiss the case. So that's why you're going to have to use money from your own pocket, and make sure you structure and organize your claim and put some evidence in it. Now, the perpetrators of gangstalker also understand the legal aspect of gangstalking, and they also know how to use the law to protect them to do the evil act. Here's how. The gangstalkers, they use multiple stalkers to harass you, and they change them up so that you won't see the same stalker. And the reason why they do this is because, say if you saw the same person stalking and harassing you every day, you could actually sue that individual, and you could actually use that evidence. But if they have a group or cluster of stalkers and you don't see the same one every day, like say you might see one on Tuesday, and then 3 weeks from now you might see that same stalker, and that's how they protect themselves, because you don't see the same person every day harassing and agitating you. Because if you did, then you could actually sue that single person for agitation and harassment. So they actually use a group and cluster of people to harass you, so you're not going to see the same person every day. And sometimes the gang stalker that you saw 4 weeks ago, 50 miles away from your house, all of a sudden you see that same gang stalker at a different location harassing you. So the gang stalkers, they actually have like this group or this collage of, or cluster of perpetrators they could pick from and rearrange them so you won't actually see them. So that's how they protect themselves, because they know you can actually sue them for stalking if you saw the same person day after day after day after day. So this is how one way they protect themselves legally from being sued. Also, one way the gang stalkers protect themselves from being sued is they use psychological warfare. They use no-touch torture, and they also use street theater to do psychological damage to the targeted individual. And also, they use isolated incidents to make it look like it's a coincidence. That way you cannot sue them. Think about it. Like, for instance, one thing they will use, they will cough when you're nearby, or they will use the cough stimuli to psychologically sensitize and harass you to it. I mean, can you legally sue somebody for coughing? Can you sue somebody for doing a certain gesture and posture constantly? Unless you record it and show there's a pattern. But they combine this with the multiple stalkers and the no-touch torture, so that way they could say, oh, that's a coincidence, that's just the person coughing, that's just the person doing this and that. So that's the one way they could avoid being sued and having police reports filed on them. Also, the gang stalkers, they could use state resources and techniques such as psychiatric reprisal to discredit you. And also, they could also use threat assessment or investigations to violate your rights. Because once you've been labeled with a psychological illness, they can use the mental and health department to do unconstitutional things or unlawful things to you, because now you're deemed as a person with mental illness. Also, with the Threat Assessment and Patriot Act, they could violate your constitutional rights, because they could say, oh, you're a lone wolf terrorist or you're crazy, and then they could use this as a justified reason to surveil you and investigate you, but really they're using it to harass and torture you. And they could also do this with the investigations, and they could do all of this to violate your human rights and constitutional rights. And also, one way they avoid being sued or being sent to jail, the gang stalkers, is by attacking you covertly and with proxies. So this attack is basically coming from the government, but they use their third-party proxy, which consists of multiple stalkers and other various government resources and agencies to attack you. So that way it's going to be hard for you to pinpoint it on one government agency. So that way, because if you can't find literally that one person who's doing it, how are you going to sue? So that's one way they avoid like being sued and stuff. this very evil attack. Oh yeah, I forgot. Here's my email address for any targeted individual to contact me. Yes, only targeted individuals. If you have any questions about the Gangstalking attack or any way, or if you have questions about solutions and reliefs to the Gangstalking attack, then please contact me at this email. Now, when you contact me from email, I want you to use your real government name. Like on the letter, when you email me, put your real name and the state that you live in. That's all. I don't need your street address. I don't need to know what city you live in. Just your name and the state that you live in. And also, I need you to when you contact me on email, I need you to make the questions not very long, and I don't need to really know your life story. Now you could give me a brief description of your attack, but I don't need anything that's very like long. And when you ask the questions, make the questions short and brief. I would only allow you to ask 5 questions, and please give me some time to respond to your questions. I'm not gonna like if you email me one day, I probably might respond to you like in 3 or 4 days. I'm not going to respond to you like exactly the same day you email me, but I will contact you. So please, and oh yeah, and any targeted individual, if you feel so hopeless that you might feel you might do something like suicide or anything stupid or violent, please contact me. I do not want you to do anything stupid like suicide or anything violent. If you feel you're going to do something like that, then please contact me. Contact me. But I don't want you to do anything stupid. Your life is valuable. Please don't let these cowards trick you into thinking that your life is not valuable. Contact me as soon as possible, and I will contact you as soon as possible too. But please do not do anything stupid.